would be $56,000 a year. Adulting, gotta love it. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be my very first official video in my brand new apartment. First and foremost, I'm sorry if it's echoey. I still need to get a few more furniture for this apartment, but I wanted to sit down and just casually chat with you guys about my experience on moving out. Just anything I think you guys should know before moving out, because to be honest with you, when I was in the process of moving out, I was completely clueless about a lot. Especially with the process of moving out in New York City, because I feel like it's a lot different and more expensive than anywhere else. I want to share my experience and what I learned before I forget, because I'm sure I'll forget about a few. I asked you guys on Instagram to send me some questions or topics that you want me to talk about in this video, which if you aren't following me on Instagram, you definitely should, because I share a lot more tips and tricks and also behind the scenes there. And I also share a lot more highlights on my apartment in my Insta story, so make sure to check that out. But without further ado, let's just jump right into it. Alright, so my process of moving out was actually quite long, I feel, because I wasn't necessarily kicked out or in a rush to move out. I just personally really wanted to move out. I wanted to experience living alone, and just that journey of my life I really wanted to experience. It was one of my goals this year, which is why I ended up rushing it a little bit more at the end of the year. Long story short, for the past few years I kept mentioning that I really wanted to move out, but it wasn't something that I put emphasis or a priority to, if that makes any sense, until this year. That's when I started like planning and looking more into it and finding out so much that I had no idea about. First topic that I want to touch on is definitely saving. I feel like saving up before moving out is highly important and highly needed, especially if you're moving out from living with your parents or after college when dorming, or even if you want to move out from living with a roommate. I feel like if you're moving out from your parents' house, it's a lot easier to save than any other option, because you don't necessarily have real bills to pay. At least from my experience, I mean, I did help my mom out with rent and bills, but I only helped her with, let's say, half. And then I also paid for my transportation, food, things that I needed, or my phone bill and stuff like that, but never actual bills. So I'd say take a lot of advantage of living with your parents before moving out and save as much as you can during that time. That's personally what I did. Like I mentioned, I was helping out my mom, but I was also saving up a lot during that time. For example, in your circumstances, you can save up a lot. I'd say at least put aside $50 to $100 from every check. In my case, my goal was to have at least 3 to 4 months worth of rent and just bills and everything. Obviously that's a little unrealistic for some people or harder to reach, but at least having 2 to 3 months rent is going to help you out a lot in budgeting, especially if it's your first time moving out, because let me tell you, girl, there's a lot of bills to pay that you're like, wow, now I understand my parents. I wanted to mention to you guys the list of things that I ended up writing in my notes of my monthly budget. First, I have rent. Let's say that it's $1,400. I also wrote electricity/gas. Usually gas is included, but I also wrote it with electricity. So electricity would be 75, maybe 50, pushing it, like if it's a studio, or up to $100 per month. I also wrote Wi-Fi. This is my first actual bill that I have to pay. My internet's going to be $75. I ended up getting the higher speed. That's not including cable. I decided to take that off for me. I feel like if you have a Fire Stick, it's more than enough. You don't necessarily watch TV like that anymore, I feel, which is great. The first internet bill is going to be a little bit more expensive because you do have to pay for installation and all that, which is usually $50. But again, they have different options. You don't have to go for the higher speed internet. I just need it for YouTube's sake. Anyways, that's my first bill that I have to pay. Yay, adulting, gotta love it. I then wrote down my phone bill. That's usually $60 a month. Groceries, I ended up writing $70 for every week, give or take, because obviously I don't necessarily eat a lot. I'm also living alone. I'm going to try my best to not order takeout, and I'm doing a little bit better on that. I also wrote down cleaning stuff, which would be detergents and maybe doing laundry. That would be, give or take, $100 is what I wrote. That equals $2,015. That's not including outings or clothings and things that you may want for yourself, and furniture, which, let me say, it's a lot of money all at once if you want to furnish your place and apartment. Now on to the apartment hunting checklist that you need to have in order to apply for any apartment, which is a lot of stuff and things that I had no idea about. When doing your little checklist, by the way, these are things that you should have in a folder before going into applying for an apartment. Because let's say that you go and see your dream apartment and you fall in love immediately and you want to apply. If you have your folder full of things that you need, you're ready to submit right away. You'll be ready to go to apply and also have the advantage of submitting first than anybody else. So keep that in mind. These are the things that you need. Usually in New York City, anywhere I've noticed, it's 40 times the rent. What does 40 times the rent mean, Natalie? Because I had no idea, to be completely honest. 40 times the rent is, let's say that your apartment is 1,400. 1,400 times 40 is what your income should be every year. Let's go to our handy dandy calculator. 1,400 times 40 would be 56,000 a year. That's what you should be making. Sometimes some places could be a little bit more lenient and flexible and maybe accepting someone that makes 50 a year or 45, pushing it 40, but usually you do have to make 60 a year or 50. If you don't have that income, for me personally, it's a lot harder to show my income because I do work from the internet, I do work from YouTube. So my income isn't necessarily like your typical W-2s, which I'll be mentioning that later. But if you don't make that income every year, if you have a good bank statement, which is why I emphasize on saving, they'll be more lenient and more flexible on that as well. You also have the option of maybe signing with somebody else. That would be a family member, someone that you trust, a friend, someone that also trusts you to be responsible enough to pay the rent every month, because at the end of the day, it's a huge responsibility for somebody to sign with you, and then, you know, just issues will come later on. My first option was going to be signing with my cousin, but I personally really wanted to do it alone, and I'm glad that I was able to do it alone. But if you have a family member, parent, or someone that could sign with you, it's also great. Side note, by the way, if you do end up applying with somebody else, you do have to pay double the application fee. Therefore, if it's 50 per application fee, you're going to have to pay 100 because it's 50 per person. You know, you also have the option of having a guarantor. I think you pronounce it, probably wrong. I know for a fact I'm not pronouncing that right. But if you have that, which is usually your parents, they have to be making 80 times the rent. So just keep that in mind. It's still an option, but it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. On to the checklist. You need 2 forms of ID, usually just 1, but for who I was applying for, I needed 2. That would be your driver's license or passport. I ended up just handing in my ID. You also need your social security card, 3 pay stubs, usually your last 3 pay stubs. That depends though, because some people may just ask for 4, for 2, or just 1. For me personally, the pay stub situation was really hard because again, I don't work a regular job, like a regular 9 to 5 that would give you a weekly or bi-weekly pay stubs. From YouTube, this is a little bit TMI, but you do get paid every month, not bi-weekly or weekly. So you only get 1 per month, which personally, I don't make a living out of YouTube. I make a living out of either sponsored videos or extra content and extra things that I do on the side. Anyways, you can hand in those pay stubs that I get every month or proof of income, or you can also make copies of recent checks that you've gotten, and those would also count. I highly recommend though talking to your broker or realtor about your specific situation because every case is different and they're usually always willing to help. Anyways, next on the checklist is letter of employment stating length of employment and salary. You also need 3 most recent bank statements. That's highly important. Most recent W-2s and most recent tax return. Right, so that's the checklist that you'll personally need, and I highly recommend if you have it before apartment hunting in a folder. That way you're easier to apply when you find your perfect apartment. Now on to brokers and realtors, if it's important to get one or if it's needed. Personally, from my experience, I definitely liked having a broker because it was a lot easier for me to apply, being hands-on and making sure that I had every paper, everything that I needed. That way you wouldn't lose your application fee money. And what I also liked about my broker is that when you're applying for an apartment, he would take it out of the roster so other people wouldn't apply to the same apartment I was applying, because sometimes, girl, it's like a gamble. There can be multiple people applying to the same apartment, which lowers your percentage of getting the apartment. Does that make sense? I'm hungry. I feel like I'm not making any sense right now. Now, if you're an expert applying for apartments or you don't need help applying for apartments or finding an apartment, I'd say you don't necessarily need a broker. There's multiple endless apps that I actually wanted to mention to you guys. This is where I ended up finding my broker. So the apps that I use to find apartments or look for apartments and go and check out apartments. How many times have I said apartments in this video? StreetEasy was one of my favorites. Naked Apartments, New York City Apartments. Zillow, I think you pronounce it, probably wrong. Trulia, which is another one of my favorites. That's where I ended up finding my broker. Realtor was another good one, Houzz, and I'll be listing any others that I ended up using right here for you guys. So again, you don't fully need a broker to apply for an apartment, but it's helpful. Real quick, by the way, even if you do use those apps, you still have to pay sometimes the people that have those apartments for rent in the apps. So just make sure that when you're searching on those apps, it says no fee. Now for broker fee, it's different with everyone, but from my experience this year, I've noticed that most, if not everyone, is doing 15% of your yearly rent. So girl, yes, a lot of money. Mine ended up being 12%, but it's different with everyone. So just make sure to ask, and make sure to ask if they could lower it for you, maybe. Now to find out what that 15% is, let's say that your rent is $1,400 times 12, that's the months, minus 15% is $2,520. So yeah. Another fee that you should know about is your application fee. So for every apartment, it's different. For mine, it was $75. I noticed that some applications could go from $50 to $150, or maybe sometimes even $25, but it's usually around the $75, $50 range. That being said though, the application fee is not returned to you if you don't get approved for the apartment. So some people tend to lose a lot of money because they have to apply to multiple apartments. I was blessed enough to just apply for this one and get it, and I was over the moon about. So back to the broker fee, by the way, you don't have to pay them until you get approved for the apartment, and you also don't have to settle for one broker. You could use multiple at the same time, and whichever one works for you is the one that you're going to end up paying, not necessarily stick to one. At the end of the day, the one that hustles the most for you, the one that works best with you, is the one that should be getting the money, in my opinion. Now the last fee you should be aware about, it's different with every apartment, but it's usually first month's rent and last month's, and you usually get the last month back if your apartment is in good conditions, I think. I hope. So yeah, hello adulting, hello independence, and hello being broke, because it's expensive, right? So let me see if I ended up not answering some of the questions that you guys left. These are a lot. Thank you so much for sending them in. Let's see, did they run your credit? Yes. How could I forget this question? This is really important. Having good credit is highly important, especially in the application process. So make sure you have a good credit. Make sure that if you're signing with somebody else, maybe they have better credit than you, so they could boost it up and help you get that apartment better. But they did run my credit. I thankfully worked on my credit a lot as I was saving up, so definitely recommend having good credit or fixing your credit. How did your mom react about your decision? This is something that I briefly mentioned to you guys in my first moving video. Like I briefly mentioned in that video, being Hispanic, it's not normal for your daughter, first kid, to move out before getting married. It's kind of part of our culture that you have to wait until you get married to move out. I personally feel that we live in a different era, or our generation is different. We think differently. So I feel that our parents should adapt to these changes, and also just let your kid grow and let your kid learn for themselves. I think it's really important for an individual. But aside from it all, I'm really blessed and thankful that my mom ended up being so supportive and so understanding at the end, because it was something that I really needed in this huge change and transition in my life, because it was not easy. Moving out brought a lot of emotions for me. I mean, there were days that I was so excited and so happy and like so eager to like search online, find the perfect apartment, and then there were days that I just would get down and would get negative about it and feel like I would never find the perfect apartment. I would doubt my decision or think that this wasn't the right time for me. Maybe I should wait longer, maybe I should save up, maybe I should just really stay home and just like wait till I'm married, you know? But I feel like in times like these where you're making such a huge, crazy change for you, it's really important to have the right people around. People that will support you, that will be positive about this, or bring you back in track if you have to, because I, for a few times, went off track, and my friends, boyfriend, cousins were really supportive and helping me a lot along the way. So I feel that it's really important to have those right people around you in times like these, which is why, back to my mom's situation, I really needed my mom's support when I was planning on moving out, but I'm glad that she understands now. Long story short, since moving, has there been any unexpected issues? Yes, there has. A lot of fixing, a lot of little things that need fixing, like the heater, like a doorknob, the kitchen sink, the toilet, just little things that needed fixing. You have to keep on track and just make sure that everything works. And by checking that everything works, I mean even plugs. Like check every individual plug and make sure that it works properly. And if anything has issues, just bring it up to your super, and I'm sure they'll be helpful. Mine has been super helpful and on top of everything, but I've also have been super on top of my things. Pros and cons, do you get homesick? Personally, homesick, of course. I will always miss my mom. I will always miss living with my mom, because that's all I've known for all my life. Just like the smallest things of home cooked meals or having people around to talk to, of course I miss, but I feel like I'm getting used to it now. I do have to say the very first night was so hard for me. Like, Emotionally, I was like, oh my gosh, is this real life? Am I really sleeping alone? Little thoughts like that would get to my mind, but thankfully I'm doing a lot better now. Good location, on budget, not busy, with good neighbors, too much to ask. Personally, those were things that I was really looking forward to, or like looking into when applying for an apartment. I really wanted the surroundings to be what I want. So location wise, like I mentioned previously in my first video about moving, borough wise, Bronx, Brooklyn, some parts of Brooklyn because some are getting really expensive. Queens, again, some parts of Queens, and Uptown Inwood are the most affordable. Everything else is absurd of how expensive. So you have to basically sit down and narrow down the places that you're willing to live, even if you don't want to. Like maybe you don't want to live in the Bronx, you want to live downtown, but hey, can you afford living in the Bronx, or can you afford living downtown? Location was a huge issue for me because I didn't want a transit street or a busy street where there would be people hanging out outside all the time. That's usually some parts of the Bronx, Dykeman, Washington Heights, and maybe Harlem. I was personally looking for a place that wasn't like that, to be honest with you. So I'm glad that my street isn't too transit. Wow, there's still that, and there's still also sirens, but it's a lot less transit. All right, last question is, why didn't I move out with my boyfriend? I got so many questions about that. I also got a lot of comments and assumptions that I was moving out with my boyfriend. Personally, I wanted to experience living out alone before moving in with a significant other. I know it's different with everyone, but it was something that I've been wanting to do for myself for the longest before even getting in a relationship. I mean, hopefully we end up moving together next year or in the following years, but for now, I really wanted to do this for myself, and he's been really supportive and understanding about this whole situation, which I love and appreciate. So that was pretty much it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video, that it was helpful, informative. Best of luck if you're planning on moving out soon. Make sure to save up a lot or enough because it's gonna be expensive. I'm also going to be listing down below my broker slash realtor because he was amazing for me. So if you guys are looking for a New York City apartment, make sure to reach out to him. But make sure to subscribe, leave me any recommendations down below for future videos, and see you next time. Bye! Alrighty, we're back to business. I'm getting hungry, so would be $56,000 a year. That's if you thought the sirens were gone, you thought wrong, girl. It's still here and ready to. My neighbors are listening to me and they probably think I'm crazy and I just moved into this apartment. I know it's. We got mail. That's something I really love about this apartment, that you actually get your packages in your door and you don't get the endless notices that they decide to leave you in my old apartment. We're moving out. Hi! Hi! Oh my god, there's our cat! Here. You have got to be kidding me. Wrote down Wi-Fi, or you can also volunteer. I don't know how to pronounce that word, so I need water. Again, probably way too much information, but hello. Hola, soy mami.